Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing? We're back. We are back. I took June off to pretend that I was going to finish some writing stuff, but instead, I think I mainly used the month to recover from keeping my dog alive. I won't go too much into it, but Mabel developed an autoimmune disorder in March. I'm sure I've talked about it before because as it was going on in the intro to the episodes in April and May, but she was pretty close to dying, and Naomi and I spent the last couple months basically nursing her back to health, the help at the vet hospital. A lot of vet visits. I make a joke a lot that the Patreon to our show, Couples Therapy, is essentially a GoFundMe for Mabel's vet bills. Not much of a joke. It's pretty real. Anyway, when I was listening back to today's episode earlier, I am pretty sure that this was taped towards the beginning of the process because I am running on almost no sleep, and Mabel, who you can hear at times in the recording, is hopped up on steroids. And yes, she did experience roid rage, and yes, she threw a chair through the front door window of the podcast studio. The fact that Mabel made herself so present in the recording spurred the very start of this conversation, actually with today's guest, and led somewhere interesting. So I guess good work, Mabel. Hey, look, she's back to pretty much normal now. With a lot of medicines and a lot of vet visits. So she's sleeping right next to me. So yay. And also yay to today's guest, because today I am talking to Jonathan Meiburg. And if you don't know who Jonathan is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Born in Baltimore, Maryland, musician and writer Jonathan Meiburg started playing music in the early 1990s in Austin, and towards the end of the decade began playing keyboards in Okkervil River. A year later, he formed the band Shearwater with Okkervil's Will Sheff as an outlet for their quieter songs. Though by their fourth album, Palo Santo, it became primarily Jonathan's group. Since 1999, Shearwater has released almost 24 albums and EPs on labels like Misra, Matador, and Sub Pop. In addition to his musical pursuits, Jonathan has also had an impressive writing career, contributing to publications like The Believer and Talkhouse, and his book, A Most Remarkable Creature, The Hidden Life and Epic Journey of the World's Smartest Birds of Prey, was published in 2021 by Knopf. Shearwater's latest album, The New World, will be released by Polyboris Records at the end of July, and folks, it is wonderful. This was an absolute delight talking to Jonathan. I started listening to Shearwater, I think when they started releasing albums on Matador, they caught my attention. And so, that's a couple decades ago. So it was, not only was it a delight to talk to him because I'm a fan of his music, but it was just a joy. We're on the same wavelength, I think, even though we've had very different experiences. Jonathan has traveled the world. I struggle to go to Target to get a 20-ounce of Diet Coke. Still, I think we're resonating on the same frequency. So it was a fun talk, very interesting talk. And I hope you enjoy the conversation. Coming up on the show, folks, I've got an incredible couple months for y'all. Just a sampling of the people I have coming up. Danny Bessner from the American Prestige podcast, wonderful thinker, political writer, Blockhead, hip-hop producer, Blockhead, Josh Olson, screenwriter, podcaster, screenwriter, writer of A History of Violence. What a fantastic film. David Rees, Hutch Harris of the Thermals, and so many more folks. So stay tuned. But for now, let's talk to Jonathan.
We have a rule on the Loma records especially, but also on the Shearwater records now, the parts that we make out at the studio in Texas, which is just in this house, and there's two dogs there, that if the dogs make any sound while we're recording, that has to go in the record.
Yeah. Now, is that just canine specific, or do you think there is utility, either aesthetic or novelty or whatever, in just having some kind of like mistake, like leaving in random mistakes if it sounds good, not just like leaving in a random mistake for...
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's a controversial opinion. I mean, that's if something just accidentally happens and it's wonderful, I love it. But if it's environmental, even better. Like there's a pecan tree and there's pecans hitting the roof. That was we made a record where you could hear some of that, or bird calls coming from outside. Once we mic'd a tree on the first Loma record, that was such a fun record because we were just trying anything. But we were mixing a song and could hear the leaves of this crabapple tree, which are real waxy leaves, rattling in the wind. And it was such a beautiful sound. I could just hear it coming through the window. And I was like, why don't we record that and put it in the song? So we did, and we used it a lot in the song. And then we've used it again and again and again on different things because it's just this wonderful sound that you can use to, like, instead of a cymbal swell, or you hardly even hear it. You just sort of feel that there's that the whole, it makes everything vibrate a little bit.
Now, you started, though, when I asked you that, you started your response with like, well, of course, like with like almost like a, well, who wouldn't want that? But there are plenty of people, I think, probably, who want complete control of their aesthetic output, whatever that is, film, television show, song, album, whatever. And so want the novelty reduced asymptotically to zero as much as possible, right?
God, Andy, I cannot think of anything I want less than to be in complete control of everything, or the illusion that I'm in complete control of everything, because whether I think so or not, I ain't.
I 100% agree with you. I'm just saying there could have, like, you could be the person who's like, no, I have to, like a Wes Anderson type. I have to fine grain control every millimeter of this thing.
Well, if you're really creating a very elaborate miniature world like that, and I mean the sort of daintiness of it, or the all the words that are occurring to me are slightly derogatory, and I don't mean it that way. Like, just if being unbelievably particular is part of the aesthetic in a certain way, and it's almost a little, it makes fun of itself a little bit too. I mean, the fact that he's like that is always a source of humor in the films that he makes. So it kind of, I don't know, he kind of goes through the wormhole and comes out the other side where it adds life to it, but it's very particular.
Yes. But like, I can't imagine him doing some kind of Robert Altman type thing where you've got like just a mass of people and you hear chatter kind of like of little bits and pieces kind of like drowning each other out. Like that to me, I'm more of a Robert Altman type where like I want the novelty of things. I want to be surprised. Like part of the joy of making things is being surprised both by yourself and by collaborators, by the world. But also like I'm a control freak outside of that. And it sometimes seeps into the artistic work. So anyway, the point I guess I'm trying to make is, or the question I'm trying to lead up to is, are you someone who is that kind of, I don't know if the word lackadaisical is what I want to say, but just like laissez-faire in your life outside of making music about the world? Or are you someone who wants to control certain things in the world, or as much as possible?
My efforts at controlling my life outside of my work have been pretty miserable failures. And I'm trying to embrace that rather than fight against it, because it seems to be what my feet want to do. And I'm thinking about, well, I also have this writing career. I wrote this book and I'm writing another book. And often I think that writing and making music, making an album or something are extremely similar, that like all artistic disciplines are essentially very similar. But writing is, I think, much harder because there aren't other people involved, especially in the initial stages. And so it's just you versus you versus you versus, I mean, you know this very well. And I don't like wrestling myself to the ground every day, which is what writing feels like. I don't think there was a single day working on that first book that I thought, man, I just killed it today, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm really on top of it now. It was always like, oh God, I wish I got further. Yeah. And then somehow the end finally appeared, but I could hardly believe it when it did. And then, like an idiot, I signed right back up to do another one like 6 months later.
Also, a book on biogeography?
Kind of, yeah. It's called The Secret Land: The Once and Future Life of Antarctica.
Oh, nice.
So I it's like a bigger subject, but it's also people think of Antarctica as like distant, cold, and dead, and it's really not far away. It's mostly not been cold, and it's never been dead ever. In fact, it's like been in charge of the climate and life on Earth since the Cretaceous extinctions in a big, big way. And I think there's a lot of aspects of life as we know it that would not exist if it weren't for Antarctica, including actually the very existence of our species.
Yeah, well, we'll see how much longer that lasts.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing about working on a natural history book is like, how do you make it not a bummer? And the answer, I think, is just to zoom out a bit. You know, like that film Powers of 10. You ever see that?
No.
The Charles and Ray Eames made in the 70s. It's a short film. It's really amazing. It's in the age of Google Earth, it doesn't quite seem so remarkable, but it starts on this couple lying on a picnic blanket in Chicago, and it zooms out until you're at the edge of the known universe. And then it zooms back in all the way to a proton on an atom inside the man's hand. And it does this in one little film and without any digital anything, because they didn't have that. It's fascinating. And the Elmer Bernstein did the music. It's great.
Like genuinely, like they use like a scanning electron microscope or something to like actually subatomic, or it's just like animation or something like that?
It's animated, but it's animated in a way that it features photography very heavily. It just doesn't seem like a cartoon or anything. It seems real.
I just want to know, do they actually go in and, I mean, I guess you can't quote unquote see a proton. I guess you can, I don't know how what do? You bounce stuff off things?
I'm not sure what they use to image the stuff at the atomic level, because I don't think there was an electron microscope that could see things that tiny yet at that point. But they were working off of electron microscopy and that kind of thing to at least source the images. And I mean, it's just super well done. This themes is. But what I was trying to say was just that if you sort of step back from all the things that we're concerned about in our daily lives and go like, wait a minute, the history of life on Earth is just cataclysm followed by astonishing reconstruction, followed by cataclysm, followed by astonishing reconstruction, over and over and over. And we're very lucky just to be able to have a ringside seat to any of this. So, my mom, I was telling her about the Eocene cooling, which is this thing that happens when Antarctica and South America separate about 30 million years ago. And it creates the Antarctic circumpolar current, and it cools down the whole world, and it freezes Antarctica and creates grasslands. I mean, all these things follow from this one rather small event that happens when you look on the map. Like the connection between South America and Antarctica is tiny on a map, but it's only 500 miles wide now. But once you let the ocean through that gateway, there's just no stopping it, because it's propelled by the winds that are generated by the rotation of the Earth. Mm-hmm. And that changes everything about the patterns of life on Earth. It causes huge extinction events. It changes the climate. It starts the climate cooling, which it basically does until now. And I was telling my mom about this, and she said, "Did we do that?" And I was like, no, like, we're guilt-free on that one. Our primate ancestors were crawling around in the trees.
Yeah, it wasn't like what was it like bugs. When the Romans like destroyed a bunch of forests, like it changed the temperature of the Earth or something like that?
This is the decline and fall of the Roman Empire thing?
Yeah,
where
there's something I remember
they changed the
reading.
localized climate around the Mediterranean.
The thing is, you're saying this in a positive way. You're like, oh, if you like actually like kind of like, hey, if you love assorted dog noises in a podcast, I don't know if
I
you
do.
can hear
It's
it,
appropriate.
that you are going to love this episode. So, okay,
I'm enjoying it already.
for you, if you like kind of like powers of 10 out and look at things, it gives you some comfort. To me, it just makes me feel despair in a certain way. Both like, it's like, oh, I don't mean like, I was about to like say something kind of like not nihilistic, like nothing matters, but in a certain sense where it's like, I feel like it has kind of dulled my ambition a little bit to think about these things, because I'm just like, I use this example a lot, but you walk down Hollywood Boulevard and you see the names of like famous movie stars from the 30s who were like the biggest stars of the 30s. You ask most people now and they have no idea who like Tallulah Bankhead is or whatever, right?
Andy, you're going to die. You're going to die and be forgotten.
Yeah. And that doesn't make me feel good. Like the kind of like the powers of 10 out to look at that stuff does not make me feel good or make me feel particularly creative, I guess, to kind of wind
how about
back.
This? You can go the opposite direction though. Like the writer Peter Matheson in that book, The Snow Leopard, has this wonderful rejoinder to he's talking about, how all the matter in the universe has existed since the inception of the universe and will presumably exist until its end. And he talks about a rejoinder to God's question to Job in the book of Job, where he goes, where were you when I laid the foundations of the universe? And says, there is an answer, and it's, I was there.
No, here's again, you were looking at this positively. I go, I wasn't there. Molecules or
totally
electrons or quarks or whatever we end up on, if maybe we reconcile quantum mechanics and relativity, those were there. But the actual configuration that created me, that in this space where we have a language that has some kind of symbolic content that can create consciousness, that's particular to 1979 to hopefully decades into the future.
But you think this is the best possible organization of the matter that makes up you right
for
now?
me? Yes. Yeah. For me.
It couldn't be something else that you'd like it to be more.
Yeah. Less anxiety.
High five. I mean, like, if I knew that I could turn my, there's these birds that I wrote this book about, right? Caracaras. They're these wacky, like, falcon. It's like if you built a crow on a falcon chassis. Birds that one species that I especially love lives in like the Falklands and Cape Horn. And they eat like chicks and eggs of penguin colonies and albatross colonies and stuff. They're the best bird in the world, best animal, no question. I'll fight you.
Okay.
But they, if I knew that I could be like recycled by those guys and turned into more striated caracaras, I'd be thrilled to bits. They're better than me.
Now, is this an attitude that you have come to through studying, whether through anthropology, through biogeography, through writing a book on the caracaras? Was this an attitude that you have come to? Was it always there?
I remember being a kid and hearing we were on a long car trip, which we often seem to be driving down highways in the Southeast, because that's where I grew up, was in the Southeastern U.S. So we were probably driving between like North Carolina and Georgia, or, like I-85 or something like that.
Okay.
And we were listening to, I think my dad was listening to Prairie Home Companion, and Garrison Keillor was reciting some Walt Whitman poems. And among them was the bit of Song of Myself where I think I could turn and live with animals.
Yeah.
They're so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. What is it? Like, not one is unhappy. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Not one is something or respectable over the whole earth. And I would just burst into tears. And I would have been like, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something. It just absolutely rang something in me, because I was like, yeah, I feel like that.
Yeah.
And um, but then I didn't study science in particular. Like in college, I wasn't particularly good at it. Um, it wasn't until after that that I really started to get into uh, nature, partly through birds. But I think birds are kind of like a gateway drug. They're colorful, they're easy to see. There's lots of them. There's tons of guidebooks, and people spend an awful lot of time paying attention to birds, and so it's a very accessible group of living things to get into. But once you are in there, it's very hard not to just keep on going. And the next thing you know, you're into invertebrates, and you're into plants, and groups that are just as unknown as birds and mammals were back in the 19th century. The invertebrate biologists have way more fun. They get to discover new species, all the time. There's all kinds of places they could look and find things that nobody's ever noticed before, or at least not said anything about it.
There's something very core about it. It's such a dumb way to put it. I'm trying to think about so when I was studying, I studied a lot of philosophy of science in grad school. Very specifically, my mentor was into studying the philosophy of nonlinear dynamics, basically, because it seems to be, I don't want to put
what is that? Tell me about, give me a primer on nonlinear dynamics.
Sure. Chaos theory, complexity theory. That's the larger, I think, umbrella for that kind of stuff. Basically the study of complex dynamic systems. So what happens when you have a bunch of parts that are moving at, let's say it's physical, different angles to each other, right? Like the difference I remember being a clock, a clock with gears is a complex mechanism, but it's not nonlinear because all the gears kind of turn one another, and it's very linear. Like one turns the other, and it's how it functions like that. Nonlinear dynamics is something like the example I always give is the currents in a river, right? When you have you have a river and you have underneath you have a bunch of different strands of the water moving in different ways, and when they're all kind of moving together in the same direction, it's placid. But when the strands start to hit each other at strange angles, that's when you get turbulence. And that's the general metaphor for all kinds of things, whether we're talking about evolution or species, or the way that species migrate, or
that sounds much more alive than a clock.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the reason we study it was because he thinks that it is the best way to look at language versus the way that language, philosophy of language was being taught in the academy, and which was a very dead version of language. And in general, a good way of looking at cultures that are complex or that have complex moving parts on different levels, right?
Just the other day, I was thinking about the evolution of languages and wondering how much not just neologisms, but how much innovations in language come from humor and people just having fun with things.
Yeah,
I was reading this crazy letter by Mozart that I remembered a quote from, and I didn't know anything about the letter, because the quote I remembered was what is it? Why should I not dispatch it? Why should I not send it? I can't think why not. And I thought, what was that from? It turned out to be a letter to his cousin, who his female cousin, and he's just it reads almost like a letter from John Lennon or something. It's just nothing but wordplay. It really seems like a very similar kind of brain. Nothing but just playing with words and being silly, and little glimpses of meaning coming through it. An awful lot of scatological stuff. He talks about putting his finger in his ass at one point. It's this is Mozart, but it's also, you're like, gosh, this is what his music is like too.
Yeah.
His music is funny. It has, I don't love Mozart, but I do agree that there's, it has a humor to it. It has a playful quality, and I wonder how much of the evolution of language, the things that are driving it. I tend to think of it as just like a game of telephone where people are sort of mishearing, misremembering little things and reconstructing it in this unconscious way. But I wonder how much of it actually was conscious, where somebody just started using a funny name for something and that took off because other people thought it was funny. And what it makes it more intentional, kind of, and it gives. I mean, do you buy this? What do you think about this as an argument?
Yeah, well, I am a big fan of Terence Deacon's The Symbolic Species, where he looks at how language developed as a symbolic medium, not just because like the way that a lot of people, especially like the sidebar, the reason why AI in the way it is with large language models will never work is because they just reduce it to pure reference. And so a machine, just like you say the word like man, and then it just like goes through all the photos of man and like puts together, probably because it's made by racists, like a white man, a white cis hetero man, like that's the picture it'll give you. But like the reason it hallucinates is because that's all it can do. It can just match the word to a bunch of pictures and then give some kind of generalized version of that. But language is full of, like you just said, playfulness. It's dense with symbolism. Language is rife with all of this stuff. It is not just this like dead thing. Like just think of, I am too old to use this as slang, but like 6'7", it's nonsense. It comes from like, at least this is again what I've read online. I don't know what kids like Gen Z is actually using it for, but like I read it's like it comes from some hip hop song. Then like basketball players started using it as slang or something like that. Or there was just like some kind of confluence between that. And like, I think a basketball player happened to be 6'7", or whose number was 6'7" or 67.
Yeah. There was something sticky about this phrase. Yeah. That it was mostly tied to fun, mostly tied to a kind of delight in doing it. And like, I remember hearing it from some kids, who like at the beginning of their infatuation with this phrase, and then not too long after that, if you mentioned it to them, they would go, "Oh God, that thing!" It was like it aged like milk, as they say. It just like curdled right away. Like once the adults were saying it, it was not cool or funny anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. But wait, I want to go back to something you said earlier because it's lodged in a neuron in my head because I thought it was profound that when you were hearing Garrison Keillor read this bit of Saga Myself, it made me think of just like, I remember I was standing out, this is maybe like a couple of weeks ago, I was standing out in the yard with Mabel, with our dog, and I was just like, the breeze was like flowing. There were like squirrels in the elm tree that's out there. And I was just like enjoying the moment. It was just a very pleasurable moment. And I was thinking, I'm like, oh, the psychopaths that are in charge of everything right now, like, has Trump ever just enjoyed a moment standing in the breeze with watching an animal run around?
This is a man who's never had a friend in his entire life and never will.
Right.
It's one of the only ways I can access anything approaching empathy for that person. Because you think about the way that would deform you if that was your reality.
Exactly.
But I don't know what else to say about him. That's a person who really, really, really missed the point.
Yeah, but there's so many people like him, and it really baffles me.
You think there are a lot of people like him?
Maybe not as malignant. Maybe he is the ne plus ultra of malignant narcissism. Like maybe that is like you don't get past him. He's the final boss of malignant narcissism.
I think he's a very particular kind of person that's rather uncommon. Not non-existent, but it's like it's. I don't think that it's that kind of person's. I mean, you rarely meet that much sort of concentrated evil in one person, any more than you meet saints. I mean, you don't meet saints very often either.
He's one end of the spectrum of human morality and humanity, period.
Yes, sure.
So there are certainly people in that realm who just like, business people who sit there and trade crypto all day, right? Whatever, wherever you want to place humans. Like there are certainly people on that end of the spectrum who like can't just stand out in the yard and enjoy the breeze and the flow of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because you felt that at an early age. How did you hold on to that through adulthood? Because I think it gets, if maybe it doesn't, if maybe it doesn't get killed, it still kind of gets buried, I think, for a lot of people.
It certainly can be. I mean, it just depends on where your priorities lie. And I don't want to, as long as you're not harming other people and other living things like deliberately or like crazy, I don't want to issue judgments on what the choices somebody makes in their life.
It's okay. I'll do it.
But okay. But it's at the same time, I mean, for me, the process of being open to what's going on in the natural world is just comes from a real delight in noticing something that's actually happening that I hadn't noticed before. I mean, wonder, I think in some ways, or awe, is really just a moment of recognizing the depth of your own ignorance.
Mm.
And you're like, oh, there's so much I don't know about this. Like I thought this was just a little creek, and it's the fucking Grand Canyon. It's just and that feeling is so I mean, it's almost crushing, but it's also can feel just delirious. And when I did my last book, part of the reason that I did it was because I knew I could use these birds, which there's at least one species of caracara in every single habitat in South America. So I knew I could go anywhere in South America and there'd be a caracara story that I could pick up and follow somehow.
Uh-huh. So
it kind of gave me a license to just go wherever I wanted and do whatever I wanted. I mean, for, till the money ran out. So my favorite part of that book was I went to southern Guyana and went up this river with four just really extraordinary people, three men who lived there, who were Amerindian guys who were just remarkable to travel with, Brian Duncan, Josie George, and Rambo Roberts. And then also this Canadian scientist named Sean McCann, who'd studied red-throated caracaras, which are like the weirdest bird of prey in the world. They eat wasps' nests and live in family groups and nest in bromeliads. And they seem to have sort of this like a tribal kind of structure, and they have really elaborate vocalizations that nobody's ever tried to decipher and all this kind of thing.
Wow.
But I thought if we just spend 5 weeks going up this river that people very seldom go up into the wildest part of all South America, something's going to happen. And it totally did. It was that became my favorite part of the book. And I had never been to the South American tropics before. I'd never seen any of this stuff. So, I filled like what I think after I transcribed all my notes and entered them into the computer, it was like 85,000 words of notes out of just that time. And it's a time that's still so vivid for me. Every day I think about it.
But you specifically just followed out the feelings of wonder or awe in your life? Like, is that what you did? Because you're saying this, like, when you say that, like, I feel the feeling in my chest. And it reminds me, like, there's, like, almost a Proustian kind of thing where it takes me back to, like, when I was a kid reading Stephen Jay Gould books and learning about evolution and being like, holy shit.
Yeah, the way I'm being taught about this is all wrong. There's certain things like Great Chain of Being stuff that are so the idea that like unicellular life is primitive or something like, it's a crazy idea. And somehow you always end up with humans being the pinnacle of evolution,
Well, yeah. It mirrors the kind of like racism in anthropology, right?
Yes. Yeah. We can't help making these hierarchical rankings of living things. And, like when we think about, sorry, this is a tangent, but it does relate to me in some way. I remember seeing an illustration, or it looks like this woodcut in a natural history museum in Ecuador that had a two-faced character like Janus in it. And in one direction, it was looking towards these like stars and galaxies, and it said the big infinity on it. And then on the other side, it's looking at like molecules and atoms, says the tiny infinity. And then there you are balanced between these two infinities. But where animals are concerned, this is something I've been thinking about with the Antarctica book. we think of there being a sort of size limit on vertebrates. You can't get smaller than a certain size. I mean, there are little tiny toads that are like the size almost of, or frogs that are like the size of a pencil eraser practically. But it's just, you can't have a microscopic vertebrate. But if you're an arthropod, that size limit is just not there. They can go on down getting tinier and tinier and tinier until they're practically almost microscopic. Or they can get up to the size of a coconut crab or what else? That's the largest terrestrial arthropod. The marine ones, like there's got to be some kind of spider crab or something that's really, really big. But it's just that the scope of how small the smallest arthropod can be to the biggest one is just so vast compared to vertebrates.
But I'm going to go back to what I asked, but
go on. Sorry.
Again, we're going back to this thing where like you find comfort in that. You find comfort somewhere in that kind of, again, we're powers attending out in both directions from the subatomic, all the, from bosons and whatever else, I guess strings, if anyone ever finds any kind of empirical evidence for that.
A thing, yeah.
All the way to black holes and red giants and all that kind of stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
You find comfort somewhere in there, whereas to me, it very much is a kind of like Kantian sublime where you are seeing the vastness of everything and it just inspires terror.
Yes, I agree. I don't know what else to say, but it's just my life is so consumed with. Of course, my life is. I'm not floating around on a Zen cloud. I'm totally consumed with anxiety. I'm taking blood pressure medication. I'm like, This is all the. I look at the news and my hair catches fire every morning. To me, it's a relief to think that the human world, as much as it's all there ever it was really going to be totally familiar to us, is just not all there is. It's not the only story. In fact, it's so far from the only story that it's hilarious. But for whatever reason, we are able to actually look beyond that world if we want to. And a lot of people have wanted to. I mean, it's incredible the things that we've been able to learn, beyond what our own senses can tell us, just telescopes and listen. We've made ears that can hear all sorts of things that we can't possibly hear, and eyes that can see almost to the edge of the universe. And it's like, why would you not just pig out on that stuff?
Well, I think a lot of people don't. Again, going back to like, it either gets killed in them. Well, then I guess enjoy the NBA finals and try worrying about how you're going to get your kid into that fancy school you want to get him into and how you're going to pay for it. Yeah. But how did you nurture it, or how was it nurtured in you? Like, how did the flame stay flamey?
Oh, I love that. That was such a spectacular, that was such a belly flop of a sentence. It was like the flame. I was like, oh man, he's going for it. Let's see.
Look, should I have stopped with the actual, without falling into metaphor? Yes. Should I have? Flame. Yes. But I threw the football.
No, it was great.
It did not get caught.
No, it's all right. Sometimes that's that's where the joy is.
How do the flames stay vibrant?
Actually, okay, I am gonna answer that question, but I did want to mention one of the things about Guyana that I really loved was that for Brian, Josie, and Rambo especially, they love to tell stories about all kinds of things that happened to them or to other people or whatever. And at night we'd sit around this one light bulb and talk. And one of the things that they found especially funny was failure of any kind. Like somebody was injured or somebody died, or there were a lot of stories where the punchline was literally this: dead. That was the punchline. And then they left. And you had this feeling that there was sort of almost nothing more funny than somebody's ambitions to do a thing being completely humbled and nothing going the way that you planned it. And there was a sense in what we were trying to do to get up this river, going over these rapids and things and climbing up waterfalls, that, failure was definitely always possible. It was one of the things that could happen. you try to avoid it, but
Sure.
it's not something to be afraid of. In fact, often it's very likely.
Yeah, I've seen the Mosquito Coast.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's the uh, I thought that was a much, even though it was a bit foreign, because in the U.S. the sense of failure is thought to be terrifying and probably contagious too. But it's just it wasn't scary to them, and I thought that was a much more healthy embrace of life than not. As far as nature and like why I like nature stuff, when I was 8 years old, we moved from Baltimore uh, to North Carolina. In North Carolina, our house was on this little hill that then, when you went down the hill, you were in this stretch of sort of buffer land between there and Interstate 40. And back in there, there were hardwood trees. There was a creek. There were some stretches of pine trees that had been planted near to the highway. There were these elaborate uh, sort of tunnels of vines that were completely. It was an absolute paradise of a woods playground for kids in the neighborhood. And like you'd go back in there, you'd find where the older kids had built weird clubhouses, like had like porn mags stashed in dubious looking boxes, and cigarette butts and bottles of empty bottles of um, Captain Jack, and then there was that sense of like there was this sort of scary world out there of the teenagers, but then there was also the uh, the world of just lying around in the woods and catching crayfish and um, picking up trash and uh,
Yeah.
we there were tulip poplars growing in there that you could cut these like beautiful you could cut them down really they were small that you could cut them down to make these beautiful sort of stakes out of them. And um, I don't know, I just loved being back in there. I loved the smell of it, I loved the feel of it. And when my parents were looking at that house, I remember going to it with them and just like about losing my mind with happiness at the thought that I could live with woods like this behind it. So I think that place um, uh, carried a lot of weight in that way. There was also a state park near there where there was a trail that went through it, like from one end of it to the other, and you could drive it took a long time to drive around it to get to the other side. But I would sometimes get my parents to drive me to one end of it and drop me off with a friend, and then we'd walk through to the other side and they'd pick us up there a couple hours later. And that was just so cool. I loved that feeling.
Yeah, but I still am curious though. You could have become a person who just got a job somewhere and then like went camping, a couple times a year.
Why did I go so far?
Or, had like a little garden or a greenhouse like in No Other Choice, right? You could have been a paper executive who had a greenhouse where you had some plants.
Could I? I don't think I'd have been good at any of these things you're describing, but go on.
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying that's a life possibility for a human being.
I was thinking about this when I was 9 years old, or I had like two things I wanted to do. When I would dream about being, or when I was like going to sleep, I would have these little fantasy scenarios I would act out in my mind. And one was that I was in a rock band, but it was all of the characters from the Lion Voltron. They were the band.
I love that.
And I was in this band with them somehow. But then also about that time, I remember they asked us, you were supposed to prepare this sort of report at school for what you wanted to be when you grew up. And what I picked was biological oceanographer because I thought basically that these were the people who did scuba diving. And I just really wanted to see places like this, things that you saw saw Jacques Cousteau exploring. I wanted to see a flying fox. I was annoyed that the animals that lived around me didn't seem that cool compared to some of the animals that lived in other parts of the world. Now I realize there was a lot that I missed. But I just had this. I had this sense that this stuff was out there, and I really, really badly wanted to see it. And I mean, when I went to college, I basically went to the college that I could get the best scholarship to.
Yeah.
And because I dropped out of high school and just went straight to college, basically.
Wait, what do you mean you dropped out?
I just stopped going. It turns out that high school diplomas are basically worthless.
I mean, I would say that in 2026, but not 1989 or whatever.
I'm not that old. I was 92.
Oh,
I'm almost that old. Yeah, we heard it from a family friend or something. I think his wife had done this, and I realized you could just like take the SAT and apply to schools, and they didn't care if you had a high school diploma or not.
And your parents didn't care.
Well, I mean, this was still well within the bounds of what seemed sensible. It was still applying to colleges. I wasn't like running off to ride the rails or something like that.
Sure,
and if I hadn't gotten in anywhere, then they probably would have said, well, I guess you got to go to high school again next year. But I applied to some schools and I got into them, and I got the best scholarship was at this school called Sewanee, which is this funny place up on a mountain in Tennessee between Nashville and Chattanooga. And it kind of looks like Hogwarts up there. It's like Gothic architecture and people walking around in gowns and stuff. It's really weird, but it's in the middle of this beautiful forest on the top of the Cumberland Plateau. And that was just totally bewitching to me. I loved what it looked like up there and how rich the wildlife it was in wildlife. I didn't pay as much attention to that then as I should have, looking back. But just being surrounded by that felt good to me. But I was an English major, so I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to natural world stuff.
Why English though? For someone who it seems like a theme that winds its way through your life is the natural world.
Partly I was chicken. I think I was scared of some of the science courses that everybody didn't like organic chemistry and physics, and I'd always hated doing math. So partly I was scared of that. I didn't have a real sense of what I didn't know what I was doing, and English was something that I'd always enjoyed reading and writing, and it seemed closer to the arts, and I wanted to be part of that. Also at Sewanee, they had a really big English department, at least at the time, and it was sort of this storied part of the school, the English department, and so I got absorbed into that. But then at the end of it, I applied for this weird fellowship called a Watson Fellowship, and it's an interesting program. They fund students at like up to, I think they have like 60 participating schools now. They'll fund you to do a project that you design yourself in 4 or more countries outside of the US that you've never been to. And you have to do it for a year, you have to do it by yourself, and you can't affiliate yourself with an institution. But in exchange, all you have to do is you send in some quarterly reports and you come to a conference at the end of the year where you meet all the other people who've been doing this. And so, you can propose anything at all.
Huh.
And so I pitched this idea of going to a study of community life at the ends of the earth. It's just like, what are the farthest out places I can think of? And places where people are really living in close in my mind, in close contact with the natural world, and what would it be like to live in that kind of situation at the far edges. So my poor parents, when I actually got the thing, had to put me on a plane to Tierra del Fuego and wave goodbye when I was like 21 years old. And that year, I started out down there, and then I went to the Falklands. I met this ornithologist in a boarding house. That's how I got into these wacky birds that live on the outer islands of the Falklands. I was an assistant on a survey of those. That completely turned my head about what the world was. And that informed the rest of the year. I lived in an Aboriginal settlement in northern Australia for a while, and the Chatham Islands off New Zealand, which are way, way out there. And then after a stop in Northern Ireland for a little bit, I went on to an Inuit settlement in the Arctic in Canada. And so when I came back from that year, I feel like I owe the person I am now to that year more than any other experience.
I mean, the picture I'm getting is that tell me how accurate this is, that you were kind of like a dreamy kid.
Yeah.
Like kind of like living in your head a little bit. And still am. I get that. And that you weren't that concerned. I was like that, but I was also very concerned with the rules and with making sure I got pats on the head from authority figures and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Don't let me fool you about that. I was that. And I still wrestle with that guy. because I was like, I always got good grades, like it was like all that kind of thing. I wanted to be the goodest boy. And, I didn't like it when other kids misbehaved.
Yeah.
And so I've had to unlearn that conditioning very slowly, and it's still difficult. Because even though, that's a rational approach, you start to realize that, like in academia, for instance, as you know well, you keep getting A's and then suddenly they don't mean anything anymore. It just runs out of road. You're like, wait, I thought this was the point, is I get A's and I impress my professors or teachers or whatever. And it's like, nope, after a while, nobody cares.
No. And I'm conditioned now to want it.
Yes.
You conditioned me. You created this monster.
Yes. And also there's a special misery of A students, because if you stay there for long enough, there's nowhere to go. You can't get better than that. And all you can do is, the only way you can go is down. So getting A's doesn't make you feel good anymore. It just makes you, kind of relieved. Yeah, it's a terrible trap. And I don't know what to say about it beyond that, but I feel that you understand what I'm talking about.
I do. But the thing that I am getting from you is that despite that, you still kind of followed out you had an idea of what you wanted to do early in life.
Yeah.
In some way, and you followed that out. Like it wasn't, I always say that for me, it was a difficult excavation to figure out my true existential desires.
Yeah, I guess when you put it that way, I think I always knew what I wanted. I just didn't know how on earth I was going to get it. But like when I came back from that Watson year, that year was such a good teacher, because nobody cared what my grades had been.
Right.
At all. I was completely useless in all the places that I showed up, and I kept being humbled again and again and again, which was hard on the ego of an A student, because you wanted to think that you could trade this stuff in for something, but you can't. And I had to have my nose really rubbed in that, but in these wonderful, just absolutely magnificent, sometimes crazy, sometimes brutal, but very, very vivid places, how many different kinds of lives there are, and that rule following for the rules of suburban Raleigh, North Carolina, is just not that ticket's not good for very much. It doesn't get you on very many rides.
No.
And so, even in suburban Raleigh, North Carolina. So, do you feel? I think in the U.S. certainly, like kids who kind of grew up middle class with aspirations in the arts feel very betrayed by the U.S. in general, because there's no infrastructure set up for you. You have to be rich or
lucky.
Or lucky.
I got lucky. That's it. That's really the long and the short of it. There's no
when people ask you like, how did you get to where you are? You're like, this path only applies to me. I don't have lessons to give you.
Yeah. Well, this show started out 16 years ago as like my writing partner at the time. And I how does someone do this? Because he came from like more of a working class background. I certainly came from a pretty solidly middle class background. It's like, well, how do you do any of this stuff? Mm-hmm. And the concept of the show shifted after like 20 something episodes, because like the answer was basically like, you can work as hard as you want. Like, here's some general things: work hard, don't be an asshole, etc. Right? Network, but don't network cynically, that kind of stuff. But the thing that you can't control, which is just the luck of it. There are people, I think I'm a funny person. I think I'm a very good writer at this point. There are better writers who don't have careers, who are struggling right now. There are funnier people that's just a part of them. They didn't decide to professionalize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which maybe is good. It's sometimes like one thing I think can be really dangerous is when you end up doing something that's just very, really close, but adjacent to the thing you really want to be doing. Like sound engineers in clubs, house engineers are very often, not always, but very often really, really angry, bitter people, because they, my theory is that they do it because they like music, because they love music, in fact. And but doing this thing has just had all the joy. Like they've just seen music debased so many times and so terribly that it's like destroyed them. And I just think you should never stand next to the thing you want to be doing.
Yeah. Yes, unless you have a pathway to it, maybe.
Yeah. Unless it connects to it in some way,
or you're okay with it. There are plenty of people who like, writing a joke online is a hobby for me, but what's really important are my children, and that's what I've invested in. That's different.
Do you have kids?
No. Do you?
Funny story. I actually have two, but I didn't know it until 2 years ago.
What?
I was
one I could see. What do you mean?
Well, a couple. I think it's maybe the first time I've told this story publicly. I'll try to do it carefully. A couple of years ago, I got an email saying, "My name is so and so. I'm studying English at so and so college, and I'm writing because I think we might share a biological connection." And I thought, what? And I stared at this for a long time. And I was like, well, wait, nobody confesses. They use the word confess. I'm writing to confess that I think we share a biological connection. It's like nobody confesses to being your cousin. And so, but then I thought, who, how, what? And this person very wisely opened their Facebook profile. So I went and looked at that and I was like, oh my God, she looks like my mom. And what had happened was is that in grad school, I was totally broke. I was a sperm donor for about 3 weeks. So it turns out I have 2 biological children who grew up actually not far from here. And I've gotten to meet them over the past couple of years. They've both graduated from college now. And we really like each other. But I don't feel like, I didn't have your jaw is hanging open, which is everybody always likes this story. I really like it. I'd be interested in it if it had happened to someone else. I never thought it would happen to me. I did confirm that they are the only ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a minute where I was like, is there a Facebook group? Like, what happens now? Because there are stories like this where
sure.
there are 50 of them. So I suddenly had 2 adult offspring, but the just immense credit goes to their parents and to them for wanting to. I mean, they're in charge of this relationship, like it's up to them. But when my biological daughter called me the next week and I talked to her on a Zoom call, which I recorded because you're never going to have that experience again.
No.
It was just so funny. The first sound I heard was her laughing. And but I wanted to tell her 3 things. And one was that I was glad she found me. The second was that I was glad that she exists. And the third was whoever she was is fine with me. Because it was like, if I were in that position, that's what I'd want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But we were talking about sort of a sense of purpose in your life. And people do devote a lot of energy to their children, especially, young children. They take a lot of work. And it can be a real source of meaning in your life. I think that's completely legitimate. But I always I had the feeling that if I had kids, any career that I was going to have in the arts was just going to go up in smoke. Yeah. There was just no way I could possibly do it. And even though I knew that meant that some doors were always going to be closed to me, or so I thought, at least, that other ones would stay open or would open that I could not get to the other way. So no matter what, there's always loss, or there's no such thing as a life without regret.
I don't know. I've been trying to.
What are the things that you did not choose? And I thought, there's a song on that. Well, once again, that first Loma record. I don't know why that keeps coming up. And this is a band for which I'm not the singer. The Emily Cross is the singer for that band, whereas Shearwater is the one where I'm the singer. But I do most of the songwriting in Loma, and wrote this song called "I Don't Want Children." And it's not a manifesto about not wanting children. It's a song about 49% wanting children. And it's one of it's maybe if I knew all my songs were going to be destroyed except one, and I had to pick one, I think I'd pick that one.
Okay, yeah, but what you are describing is that you got to a certain point in your life, and then suddenly it was recontextualized in a way that made you reconsider your place and things. And maybe that is a piece of what I'm like kind of poking at in talking to you, in that like, yeah, you had. I think like when I was leaving grad school, and by leaving I mean I got kicked out because I wasn't doing what they wanted me to do. I was doing my own thing.
Grad school is a pretty good thing to leave a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, I was starting to do my dissertation, and they were like, "Can you do it again?" I was like, "Oh, my mentor's into nonlinear dynamics. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in like German and French writers." And they're like, "No, you're not going to do that." And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And then they said, "No, you're not. Stop doing it." And then anyway, but like that was me kind of like coming into focus as a human being a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas, and every step since then has been me trying to delineate my existence in some way. And I don't mean this, and I don't mean it to sound so narcissistic. I don't really like, I'm not sitting here every day.
No, but you have to, some of that is discovery, because you sometimes you're really not aware of what choices you're making. And so this is where therapy is helpful, because you have to actually sit and go like, what am I choosing that I'm not aware that I'm choosing? But like, you can define yourself by what you are. You can also define yourself by what you aren't. And defining yourself by what you aren't is super fun. It gives you so much. It can give you such a feeling of power in some ways, because you can go like, you know what, there's everybody's going crazy about the Knicks and the Spurs, and I could not possibly care less.
I know.
Well, there's helicopters flying over, and it's like, there's like people. And I was like, I don't care. I still don't care. And fine, but like, I don't. It's not important to me. This is not part of my identity. And I think it's really important to choose what you graft onto your identity and what you don't, to the degree that you can, because there's all kinds of things that just stick to you anyway. But the wonderful thing about traveling and about being blasted through the world like I was lucky enough to be back when I was 21 years old, is that your context keeps changing, the culture changes, the language changes, the scenery changes, everything keeps changing. But you start noticing that there's some things that just keep staying the same. And that's you, because it's like, if you've eliminated every other variable in these situations, there's things about the way stuff feels, about what's important, about what colors pop out to you, what people you gravitate towards, that kind of thing. You're like, oh, I'm that thing. I'm whatever that is that's sticking to all these other things. And that's really, really useful information, especially if you're working in the arts, I think.
Yeah. Right at the end, I'm just curious, early on, did your parents nurture this feeling in you? Or was it something you kind of like held on? Like, I was imagining like this one time I found a bunch of caterpillars and I put them in a shoebox and I put them in my closet. And then that was mine. Those were my little caterpillars.
Yeah.
My dad found them. He's like, what are you doing? Those are going to turn into moths and like eat all your clothing. But like before that, this was a thing. This was my thing, right? It was my little.
Yeah.
So was it something that your parents or that there was some authority figure nurtured this in you? Or was it like something that you had to find the fortitude within to nurture?
Probably both. I was, lucky to have some really wonderful teachers who, especially in artistic type stuff, in theater, in choir, in creative writing. I went to a young writers camp at Duke University one summer that was just super awesome. My parents are funny. My dad worked for the government for almost 50 years for the EPA. And, but he was the furthest thing from like a tree hugger. He's a bureaucrat. He studied, systems of, governmental processes. Like his dissertation, which he was still, I remember him working on it. And it's the title of it was Protect and Enhance Lowy's Juridical Democracy and the Prevention of Significant Deterioration of Air Quality. And that was about the way that the Clean Air Act was interpreted by Congress, essentially. It's back when U.S. government mattered, or back when Congress mattered. And so he was a very, very much a process guy, and a lot of what EPA did was regulation of various pollutants into the air and the water, and that you don't really have to be that into ecosystems to be involved in that kind of thing.
Right.
So I like to think that I've gotten my dad much more interested in the actual natural world than he ever was, despite working for the Environmental Protection Agency for almost 50 years. My mom was more of she taught piano lessons and voice lessons sometimes. She got a degree in music. She ended up getting a degree in counseling and as basically a child psychologist for a number of years. She did play therapy. And they were, I think they've always sort of looked at me with a little bit of sort of, I've always sort of amused them. You know, they're just like, well, look at him go. But there was never a like, son, you have to do something practical with your life kind of conversation.
Was there anything that was the outside of yourself that was pointing you in a certain direction? Or was it really that you were kind of like given the space to figure yourself out?
I was given more space than most people on the planet get. I was given less space than some people on the planet get. I wanted to, but I still, I think if 9-year-old me, who wanted to play in a band with the Voltron characters and go diving on the Great Barrier Reef, could see me now, he'd probably give me a thumbs up. He'd be like, "All right, yeah, I think you're doing okay, buddy." And I try to remember that when I'm worried about like, oh my God, my life. I'm trying to kill rats in this apartment, and I don't know, or mice. And sorry, not rats. I don't want to make it worse than it is. They're just mice. The fact that I don't really know what the future holds for me as far as my career goes, or, I get real worried about that because I think, especially if you grow up in this kind of suburban world, mm-hmm. You're conditioned, and you can never totally escape your conditioning that what you did is like somehow wrong. But when I left, are you feeling me now?
That was a deep existential groan of recognition.
I was about to do a PhD in biology, actually, at University of Texas. And I had to just stop because I was touring in bands, and I would have had to do a year of remedial courses, like that organic chemistry, physics stuff I was so scared of.
Yeah.
And, it would have been the worst year of my life. I would have had to give up music entirely. And so I had to call the guy who was going to be my advisor and tell him from a truck stop in Oklahoma, we were on tour, and tell him that I wasn't going to do that. And then a couple of years later, he turned up at a show we played at South by Southwest. And I just saw this guy as I was loading some gear off stage, and he said, "Hey, it's Mike Ryan, and I was like, "Dr. Ryan, what are you doing here?" And he said, like, "I just wanted to tell you, I think you did the right thing." I could have kissed that man. And I think he probably knew how important it would be to me to hear that, because I did want to still be a good boy. And I felt like I'd been a very bad boy. I'd been a very bad boy by leaving the academy. But then I look at my, the people I know who went on to lives in that world, and it seems no easier than scrapping your way through being a musician and a writer.
No. When I was getting kicked out, my advisor, who's different from my mentor, he came into my office and we were talking. He's like, "I don't think I would tell anyone to do this. This was back in the mid-aughts. He's like, "I wouldn't tell anyone to do this. Like, I would say go become a plumber or something that actually is like the philosophy job market is terrible."
Yeah. If you, yes, philosophy especially. Philosophy and classics. I feel like those two. It's you've got to have a special kind of. A friend of mine was a very good French horn player, and trained on the French horn, and was thinking about when it was time for her to go to college, going to music school. And her French horn instructor said, "If you are 98% sure that this is what you want for your life, do not do it." Because he knew, this is like going to be about trying to chase an orchestral job somewhere, and there are far more people applying for this than there's, that he knew how hard that was going to be, and that the only people who would not find it difficult are the ones who literally could not imagine anything else.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's, I think, where you and I are, where it's like, yeah, we couldn't imagine anything else. We're doing the thing, but it's also...
I wanted to explore the world and play in rock bands.
Yeah.
And I was willing to pay, as Robert Fripp says, I mean, when the importance of certain burning questions can be determined by the price we are willing to pay for the answer.
Seems like a nice place to end. Thank you so much for joining me. I could keep talking to you for hours.
That's great. Well, I would keep talking to you for hours, so I think it's good to find a place to stop.
I think the dog needs something.
We didn't even talk about Antarctica. That's great. I'm thrilled.
Well, I mean, I would love to have you back up. Maybe when the book comes out, you can come back on.
That'd be great. It'll be a couple of years from now, I think, but I'm trying to get it all done because, like, man, it's wild down there. It's crazy. I've seen things no other human being has ever seen.
That's got to be I mean, I was going to say good feeling because I didn't know what adjective to use. I don't even know what feeling that is. That's such a specific, unique feeling.
I mean, it's like the astronauts going around the back of the moon.
Yeah.
Like you drop these cameras down 2,000 meters in the sea, and you know that whatever image appears when it reaches the seafloor is going to be some part of the world no one else has ever seen and probably will never see again. And you have no idea what you're going to see.
Ooh.
And you're also sleep deprived and the sun's up all the time.
Right.
And so it's like, whoa, this is amazing. I'm so tired.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in a liminal space, a liminal kind of like sphere.
Giant sponges and sea spiders and what the hell is that purple thing? And was a whale fall? What's going on down here? And it's lit down there. And then you think, and you know what? There's never been light here in this place, like maybe ever. And certainly not for millions and millions and millions of years. We are the first light in this place.
Yeah. And that light's sure probably was lighty.
It was very lighty. Yeah, it was pretty powerful. But, for the most part, things didn't really react to it everywhere. Like you'd go over like an ice fish and you'd be like, aren't you more freaked out? But ice fish start their lives in the top of the water column, but and
they can see light. They can sense it.
Yeah, they can. They have eyes. But some of these other things, I don't know. I mean, sponges can't really register a reaction at you that you could. I don't know if they can sense light or not.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Andy. We're done.
No, I love it. I'm more concerned with my dog needing to something.
Yeah.
But
take care of your dog. She's a good producer.
Jonathan, seriously, this is just absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it was a joy to talk to you. Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate your willingness to just sort of go wherever.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.